Come on then. I knew he wasn't upset with me. I knew I was safe, but still didn't like the idea of Clive and Alan going head to head. We met Clive going down the stairs as we were heading up. I presumed Caroline was hiding, as I was taken into Pat's bedroom. Clive said to Alan, "You don't say nothing, no answering for him." Clive bent down as I sat on the edge of the bed, his beer-stained teeth in front of my face, so close I could taste it. "Don't lie to me." He took a breath, then added, "Because I'll know." He pointed in my face. "I won't," I stammered, looking confused. I dared a help-me glance to Alan. He nodded a "listen to him" expression. Clive said, "Right, did you trap my Harry's finger on a door?" It took me a minute to realise Harry was his son, and I hardly ever saw him. I knew nothing about a trapped finger. No, I stammered. No, he repeated, taking a step back. "Don't lie to me," he screamed. "I'm not, I don't know anything," I screamed, as he grabbed my jumper and turned his hand so the jumper dug into my neck. He lifted me clean off the bed and towards the wall at speed. I couldn't breathe. Clive's fist came back, and as it did, Alan cannonballed into Clive from the side. I hit the wall and then fell to the floor. I was choking. I got my jumper off and realised why I couldn't breathe. I'd had a whistle or a chain that my nan had brought me beneath my jumper. As he twisted his hand, it had dug into my neck. As soon as I released it, I was okay, but I was panting. I hit the floor hard, clutching my throat, then looked up and saw Clive punching Alan in the back of the head. Alan was bent over and saw me. He grabbed Clive's arm. "Run," he said. I jumped across the bed out of reach and turned to see Alan lift his arms above Clive's neck, leaving Alan's face free to get hit. He took a few hard punches, but managed to grab Clive's head and pull it downwards, and that's when Alan went to work with his knees. Clive's face took several knees before Clive pushed forwards, knocking Alan onto the floor, and Clive fell on top of him. The force had sent Clive sprawling, so now Alan's face was by Clive's feet. Clive stood up and kicked at Alan. Alan was fast, though. He hooked both arms around his leg and sank his teeth into Clive's ankle. Clive grabbed his leg in pain. I arrived at Wenzel's in seconds and banged on the door. He answered gingerly. "What the fuck do you want?" I told him. "Clive and Alan are fighting." "Upstairs," he said, and closed the door on the cool night air. Later I would find out Clive got up and tried to kick Alan again when he was down. Alan had grabbed him and thrown him into the bedroom window. After a few punches, Alan told him, "I promised your mum years ago I'd take care of you, but if you ever touch that boy again, I'll kill you." The next day Alan picked me up and told me everything. Alan didn't drink because of his epilepsy. However, later when Clive popped in with 8 cans, Alan accepted, and they were fine again. That's Mac rules, and that's the Moss way. Chapter 10. I'd remember what Alan said, my real dad, and how he might not be my real dad. However, at 8 years old, my nan had just died, who was like a mum to me. I didn't quite get it. Kids are pretty durable, but there was no could it get any worse feelings back then, and no why me feelings at all. I just took it on the chin. It's like being told I couldn't play outside because there were drunks out there. I'd understand I couldn't go out, but I wouldn't understand the ramifications that if I did, I could be harmed. I recalled the stories I was told about Alan's epilepsy, the time we moved house and he'd had a fit a few days later. That night he woke up and walked downstairs, he opened the front door and peed in the street thinking it was the toilet. Nan wouldn't wake him in case it set off a fit. It did cause a bit of a scene for the people having a garden party across the road. In another story, he'd flip out of bed repeatedly into the wood-chip wallpaper, smacking his face into the wall in the process. He spent a week in hospital and Nan and I visited him. We brought apple pie, which was his favourite. I don't remember it, but Alan told me all about it. When we left, he asked the nurse who we were. "That's your wife and son," she'd replied. "Holy shit, I'm married," he responded. I knew exactly what to do if he had a fit. I'd learnt not to let him grab me if he went into one, and all about the recovery position. He'd usually come around within an hour and take another half hour to get his bearings. It was Christmas Eve and the place was bare. "I should not approve of this, lad," Alan said earlier in the day. I pretended not to hear him. Didn't matter, we had each other. "I'm tired, Dad," I said later, heading to bed. He was right, the place was bare. She wouldn't approve. She always made a big show of Christmas. But hey, she was dead. That was the bottom line. She was dead, and we were here, and we had to be ourselves and just survive it, so sod it. I hated Christmas, and I hate people. I got up in the morning and Alan smiled. Bro? I jumped on the bed beside him and tucked into some Vickies. Come on then, let's go and see what today holds for us, he said, jumping out of bed, pushing me backwards playfully. I wasn't excited. I had no reason to be. Alan nodded for me to go in front of him as we went down the stairs. I opened the living room door and it was magical. There were lights everywhere, along the top of the curtains, over the sofa, around the fireplace. Even the TV had a set of lights around it. Stood in front of the window was our huge tree, and on the top was an electric angel that had a halo and a book that lit up in gold. The wings sparkled. Every year Nan had the star, and this year she had her heart set on that angel. Alan had done it all by himself on his own on Christmas Eve. Beneath the tree were loads of presents. I knelt down in front of the tree. Alan joined me. We weren't praying. Neither of us were religious as far as I knew. We just took those 5 minutes for Nan and sat in silence. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. And then it happened. We cried at exactly the same time. We both just burst into tears and the heavens opened and ran down our faces. We held each other and cried until we could cry no more. I remember his big green jumper being soaked from my tears. He took his green woolen hat off and wiped the tears away too. He passed me a parcel, and I pushed it away. We got you these, I said. I went and got the parcel from upstairs, and Alan opened his new Western books that Nan and I had brought him. Thanks, lad, he said, rubbing my head. My granddad and my best friend. That night, the black and white portable TV clicked off. Night, lad, he said. Night, Grandad, I replied. And there was an emptiness where we both thought, night, Pat. The huge water bottle was full and had iced over outside because of the snow. I chucked my wellies on as I could see Alan pushing down on it hard, and it looked fun as the huge ice circle wobbled around. I could see it bouncing softly over the lip of the huge blue bucket, and it was really thick. Here, lad, he waved me over as I plodded through the snow towards him. He lifted the whole circle out and placed it standing up on the floor in front of me. Go on then, he said with a huge grin. What? I said. Give it a whack, lad. I laughed. It was very thick and cold. It looked amazing, but I wasn't going to hit it. Give it a kick then, he said, and I did a few times and it didn't break. Your turn, Grandad, I said, raising my arms to hold the top of this thing. We rolled it against the fence post. Alan asked me if I wanted another go before we broke it. No, you won't break it, I said, knowing he was capable of such things with ease. He stepped back. I heard him take a short breath in rapidly, and then let it out twice as fast as he stepped forward. Hey! The ice ring went clean in half and fell to the ground, and I bowed to him, Aikido style. I was sleeping on the floor in Nan's room, as I had when she was alive. It was still Nan's room, although she'd been dead more than 2 months. We could still sense it there, and were in the same routines as though she was still alive. We even watched the same programs. I knew he'd not settled straight away. He hadn't since Pat passed. I waited for his breathing to change before I let myself sleep. I woke up, it was dark, and I could hear movement. The moon left enough light for me to make out a figure on Alan's side of the bed. He'd got up to go to the toilet. I had an idea. He wouldn't even see it coming, and he'd find it funny. I heard him curse as he walked into the corner of the bed, and I knew one of 2 things would happen. Either he'd walk past, I'd trip him, he'd fall, and we'd play fight on the floor. Or he'd see me trying to trip him up, and he'd kick me away and jump on me, and then we'd play fight on the floor. Neither of these things happened. Chapter 11. Grandad took a step in front of my feet and I reacted. I spun to the side, straightened my leg an angle, keeping them tense, and turned my foot, knocking into him perfectly, just how he'd taught me. Got him! He tripped, and the second he started to fall I knew something was badly wrong. He fell forwards and immediately went into a fit. He toppled and fell, hitting the radiator by the wall. I heard it rattle in the dark, but didn't see the impact. Then he was upright again and falling backwards, straight down like a falling wall. His head hit the floor hard. He'd landed on Nan's bathrobe, which I'd used to cover myself up with, because it still smelt of her. It did nothing to hide the vibrations through the floorboard of his head hitting them. I remember the sound of pipes rattling to this day. I grabbed his face and tried to remember everything I'd been told. Don't move him, get help, don't put anything in his mouth, don't let him grab you. When he stopped shaking, put him in the recovery position. All the information hit me within milliseconds. He wasn't shaking, he wasn't moving as far as I could tell. He wasn't breathing. I knew if he wasn't breathing, he needed immediate help. He must have slept to his jeans because his keys were all chain attached to them and it was currently in his pocket. I could see the chain and the bulge. I crawled over him and dug my hand down deep, struggling to remove the keys on a metal clasp. I ran downstairs and into the front door, literally. I fumbled with the keys and ran outside. My memory blanks here. I don't know who I told first. I don't know where I went or what happened. I do recall the verdict. Brain hemorrhage, just like Nan. I also remember it was 2 days until his Doberman lay down and died. Oddly, the only memory I have of our dog. I couldn't tell anyone. I was destroyed. I'd lost my parents as far as I was concerned. I was moved back to Mum and Dad's, and everything changed. Mum looked after the kids and did the cooking. She wasn't very good. Her depression got worse and she drank heavily after losing her mum. On the very rare occasions she tried to go out, she'd get to the lamppost and freak out. She'd only go because Auntie Betty or Maggie would promise her a bottle of sherry if she made it. I'd watch from the bottom of the Moorhill Road, usually stood beside Wenzel, who'd repeat, "She won't make it, silly cow never does, fucking waste of space." As soon as she'd get home, whoever had taken her and Wenzel would say how well she'd done, how proud they are of her for trying. Then her visitor would leave and he'd start up. Waste of time that, wasn't it? Don't know why you bother. If it wasn't for me, you'd have nothing. Fucking useless you are. What are you? She'd look down and he'd repeat, "Well, I'm talking to you." He'd pull her chin up to meet his gaze. "What are you?" He'd sneer. "Useless," she'd mutter. "That's right, don't fucking forget it," he'd demand, and walk off. We all knew if she didn't reply, he'd slap her around, and if he didn't get a reply, he'd start on the kids, usually me. I'd take a few whacks, so he'd insult Bernie and Caroline until Mum said I'm useless. Then he'd stop, but not until he'd dish her an order, make food, or get upstairs. Even he knew his limits, though. He never hit Jonathan. I remember that day well. Jonathan was playing with the plastic washing basket, and Wenzel gave Bernie the sort him out look. She replied, "It's just playing." Wenzel stared at her and she moved the basket from Jonathan, who promptly went back over to play with it. Wenzel slammed his plate down and stood up heading towards Jonathan, and Bernie threw herself at him. I'd never seen her move so fast. She was like a cat. She'd gone from her feet curled up beneath her on the sofa to on top of Wenzel instantly. "I'll kill you, you bastard. Touch him, I'll kill you." He spun and she went flying. Jonathan and I ran to opposite corners of the room. She clawed his face. He hit her and grabbed her wrists, forcing her downwards. She was in obvious pain, but looked straight at him. "You can do what you want to me, but you do not touch him." Her eyes were like steel. That's the only time I saw her stand up for herself. I knew beyond a doubt, if he touched Jonathan, she would kill him. He wasn't violent for a while after that incident, maybe even a week. The things to remember is that as a kid these things were not unusual. The insults and violence was a normal part of everyday living, and we totally accepted it, because we'd known no different. We knew something wasn't right, like I knew from day one Wenzel didn't want or like me, and it was okay, because Nan and Alan had. In a warped way, when he didn't tell us off or hurt us, it was worse, because then it was like he didn't care at all. Then at least when he did hit us or wanted us for something, it felt like he did care. And we protected him too. He never did it in front of people. If I was out to the shop and someone asked me a question, I'd look at him for the okay to reply. If I didn't get the nod, I didn't speak. He controlled my voice, my actions, and my life. He held all the keys to all the doors. I was his to do as he pleased. I hated it, however that was my life, and it was normal. I had an advantage the others didn't though. I'd known another life.